The conference hall on Station Meridian Prime was the biggest meeting place in this part of the galaxy. Tall windows showed the purple and blue clouds of the nearby nebula. Inside, creatures from 47 different worlds sat in their special chairs and breathing pods. Some had fur, some had scales, and some looked like walking crystals. They were all here for one reason. They wanted to hear what the humans had to say. Ambassador Katie Morrison walked to the center stage. She wore a simple gray suit that looked plain compared to the bright robes and armor of the other delegates. Her red hair was pulled back tight. She carried no weapons, just a small tablet with her notes. Behind her stood Danny Cooper, a young man who worked as her assistant. He looked nervous, but Katie looked calm. Katie began to speak. Her voice was steady and clear. She talked about trade routes and peaceful cooperation. She explained how Earth wanted to help other worlds grow stronger through fair business deals. She smiled often and made jokes that the translation devices turned into words the aliens could understand. Some of them laughed. Others nodded their heads or made whatever gesture their species used to show agreement. High above the main floor, in a special gallery for important visitors, King Zarthok watched. He was a Krellian, which meant he looked like a large lizard that walked on two legs. He had 4 eyes, all of them narrow and cold. His scales were dark green, but as he watched the human woman speak, they started turning red. This was a bad sign. When a Krellian's scales turned red, it meant anger. Next to the king stood Commander Vexnar, his top military advisor. Vexnar was also a Krellian, but smaller and less decorated. He could see his king's scales changing color and knew trouble was coming. "She speaks well for a primitive creature," Zarthok said in his own language. The translator box on his chest turned his hissing words into standard galactic speech. "But it does not matter. These humans think they can just arrive in our galaxy and demand respect. They need to learn their place." Vexnar shifted uncomfortably. "My lord, perhaps we should listen to their proposal. The humans have made strong friends with several systems already. They defeated the Xanth pirates last year without losing a single ship. They might be more capable than they appear." The king made a sound deep in his throat that was clearly a threat. Several nearby delegates moved away from him. "Capable? They crawled out of their gravity well only 50 years ago. We have ruled this sector for 300 years. I will show them what real power looks like." Katie finished her speech. Most of the delegates made sounds of approval. A few species that were friendly with the Krellians stayed quiet. Katie noticed when the Krellian delegation stood up and walked out of the hall before the session was even finished. She glanced at Danny, who raised his eyebrows slightly. It was rude but not surprising. The Krellians had a reputation for being hostile to newcomers. What Katie did not see was the hand signal King Zarthok made to his personal guards as he left. It was a simple gesture, but every guard knew what it meant. Kill the target. Make it quiet. Later that evening, Katie returned to her rooms in the diplomatic section of the station. These rooms were supposed to be safe. The station had rules. No weapons except for registered security forces. No violence against diplomatic guests. These rules had kept the peace for over 100 years. Katie took off her jacket and hung it carefully in the closet. She poured a glass of water from the dispenser and sat down at her desk. She opened her tablet and began reading through messages from Earth. Her superiors were pleased with how the meetings had gone. 3 more systems wanted to open talks with humanity. She smiled and took a sip of water. It had been a good day. Then the lights flickered. Katie set down her glass slowly. Her whole body went still. The lights flickered again, and this time they stayed dim for 3 full seconds before coming back to normal brightness. That was not an accident. Someone had cut the power and then restored it, probably to test the response time of the station's backup systems. Katie's face changed. The friendly diplomat expression disappeared. Her eyes became cold and focused. She stood up and walked to the closet, but not to get her jacket. She reached behind the hanging clothes and pressed her palm against what looked like a solid wall. A hidden panel slid open. Inside was equipment that no diplomat should have. Combat knives with black blades, a small but powerful pulse pistol, flexible body armor that looked like regular clothes, and a device about the size of a coin that would jam security cameras and sensors. Katie had just started pulling out the armor when her door exploded inward. The blast was precise, meant to stun but not kill immediately. 6 Krellian warriors rushed through the smoking doorway. They wore black armor that had no markings or symbols. Their plasma rifles glowed with ready charges. These were not regular soldiers. They were assassins. The leader pointed his rifle at Katie. "Ambassador Morrison," he said through his translator, "King Zarthok has declared you an enemy of the Krellian Empire. Come with us quietly and your death will be fast." Katie stood very still. She was still holding the body armor, not yet wearing it. She was in her work clothes, just a white shirt and dark pants. She had no visible weapons. 6 trained killers with plasma rifles stood between her and the only exit. By any reasonable calculation, she was dead, but Katie Morrison was not reasonable, and she was not what she appeared to be. She looked at the 6 warriors. She looked at their weapons, their armor, their positions. She calculated angles and distances in her head. She counted heartbeats. Then she smiled. It was not the smile she had used during her speech. It was not friendly or diplomatic. It was the smile of a predator that had just realized the prey had walked into a trap. The lead warrior took a step back without meaning to. Something in that smile triggered an ancient instinct that existed in species across the galaxy. The instinct that said, "You are in danger." "You made a mistake," Katie said softly. Her voice was different now, colder. "You should have checked my file more carefully." "Fire," the leader commanded. Blue plasma bolts lit up the room like lightning. The air filled with the smell of ozone and burned metal. The warriors were experts trained since childhood to kill. Their shots were perfectly aimed at where the human woman had been standing. But Katie Morrison was not there anymore. She moved like something that should not be possible. Humans were supposed to be slow, clumsy, fragile. The creature moving through the Krellian formation was none of these things. She was fast like a striking snake, fluid like water, and precise like a machine built only to kill. Katie's hand shot out and struck the nearest warrior in the throat. Krellians had tough scales, but they had soft spots, and Katie knew where every single one was located. The warrior dropped his rifle and fell to his knees, gasping for air that would not come. The second warrior tried to swing his rifle around to track her, but Katie was already moving. She grabbed the rifle barrel and pulled, using the warrior's own grip to throw him off balance. As he stumbled forward, she drove her knee into his face. The crack of breaking bone was loud even over the alarm sirens that had started blaring throughout the station. The third warrior fired again, but Katie had dropped low. The plasma bolt passed over her head and hit the wall, leaving a black scorch mark. Katie swept her leg out and broke the warrior's knee backward. He screamed and fell. The fourth and fifth warriors tried to coordinate their shots, but Katie moved between them, using their own bodies as shields. She took a rifle from a fallen warrior and smashed it into the fourth warrior's helmet. The weapon broke, but so did the helmet and the skull underneath it. The fifth warrior managed to grab her arm, but Katie twisted in his grip and struck him 3 times in rapid succession. Throat, solar plexus, knee. He dropped like his strings had been cut. 8 seconds had passed since the first shot was fired. 5 warriors were down. Only the leader remained standing. He stared at the small human woman who had destroyed his team. His rifle hung loose in his hands. He was shaking. "What are you?" he whispered. Katie walked toward the last warrior slowly. She was not even breathing hard. There was blood on her white shirt, but none of it was hers. The warrior backed up until he hit the wall and could go no further. "How many?" Katie asked. Her voice was quiet, but somehow more frightening than if she had shouted. "How many diplomats has your king killed this way?" The warrior's scales flickered between green and yellow, which meant fear in his species. "I do not know the exact number. Many, dozens, maybe more. It is what he does when talks do not go the way he wants. And nobody stops him? Who would dare? He is the Galactic King. His empire controls 200 systems. He has the biggest fleet in this part of space. Anyone who opposes him disappears." Katie nodded once. Then her hand moved in a blur and struck the warrior on the side of his neck. He fell unconscious but was still breathing. She would need at least one of them alive to deliver a message. All around the station, alarm bells were ringing. The security system had detected the weapons fire and the explosion. Katie could hear heavy footsteps running toward her location. She had maybe 2 minutes before station security arrived, and they would have questions she did not want to answer yet. She moved quickly. The white shirt came off, revealing the black tactical suit she wore underneath. All diplomats from Earth were supposed to wear these suits under their regular clothes, just in case. Most diplomats never needed them. Katie had known she would. From the hidden panel in her closet, she pulled out the rest of her gear. The pulse pistol went into a holster on her hip. The knives attached to her belt and boot. The jamming device went into her pocket. Last, she grabbed a small breather mask. The station had a lot of different atmospheres in different sections, and she might need to go places where humans normally could not breathe. Her tablet buzzed with an incoming call. Katie looked at the screen and saw Danny's face. He looked terrified. "Katie, the security alerts say there was an explosion in your room. Are you okay? I'm coming to help you right now." "No," Katie said firmly. "Danny, listen to me carefully. Stay in your room. Lock the door. Do not open it for anyone except station security with proper identification. Do not trust anyone until I contact you again." "But what is happening? Who were those Krellians? Why would they attack you?" Katie's expression softened just a little bit. Danny was a good kid, smart and hardworking. He did not deserve to be pulled into this mess. Because things are not always what they seem in this galaxy. And neither am I. Stay safe. That is an order. She ended the call before he could argue. Danny would be confused and scared, but he would be alive. That was what mattered. Katie moved to the door and looked out carefully. The corridor was empty for the moment, but she could see security teams at both ends moving toward her position. She went the other way, through the service corridors that maintenance workers used. These narrow passages ran behind the walls of the whole station. Katie had memorized the layout during her first week here. She always memorized layouts. You never knew when you might need to disappear quickly. She moved through the passages like a ghost, her soft boots making no sound on the metal floor. Behind her, she could hear security teams entering her room and finding the unconscious Krellians. There would be confusion, then investigation. Then someone would figure out that the human ambassador was missing. Katie needed to be far away before that happened. She climbed down a maintenance ladder and emerged in a different section of the station. This area was mostly cargo bays and ship docking ports. Fewer cameras, fewer guards, easier to move without being seen. The jamming device in her pocket would scramble any cameras she passed, making her appear as just static on the recordings. High above the station, the Royal Krellian cruiser hung in orbit like a sleeping dragon. It was 3 times bigger than any other ship nearby. Weapons covered its hull like scales. Running lights proclaimed to everyone that King Zarthok was here, and he was important. Inside the cruiser on the command deck, the king sat on his throne and waited for news. He had been waiting for 20 minutes now, and he was starting to get annoyed. The assassins should have reported back by now. Commander Vexnar approached nervously. "My lord, we have a problem. The assassination team has gone silent. Station security found them in the ambassador's quarters. All 6 of them. They are alive but badly injured." Zarthok's 4 eyes widened. "All 6? How is that possible? It was one small human female." "I do not know, my lord. But there is worse news. The ambassador is missing. Station security cannot find her anywhere." The king stood up from his throne. His scales had turned bright red, the color of rage. "Find her. She cannot have gone far. A human cannot survive long on this station without help. Send out search teams. Question everyone. I want her found and brought to me." "Yes, my lord. But there is something else you should know." I pulled her official file from the Galactic database. Her history before she became a diplomat is completely classified. The human government will not share it. The only thing it says is that she worked in special operations for 15 years. Special operations? Zarthok repeated slowly. What does that mean? I researched human military structure. Special operations means elite soldiers who do secret missions. Missions that their government does not want anyone to know about. The king felt something he had not felt in many years. A cold feeling in his chest that might have been fear. "You are telling me I tried to assassinate a human super soldier?" "I do not know what she is, my lord. But I think we made a serious mistake." At that moment, the ship's alarm started blaring. The tactical officer's voice came over the speakers, high-pitched with stress. "My lord, we have an unauthorized shuttle approaching our position. It is not responding to our hails." Zarthok ran to the main view screen. A small shuttle was visible, streaking toward them through space. It was moving fast, dodging left and right in patterns that should have been impossible for such a small craft. "Destroy it," the king ordered. "We are trying, my lord, but it is too fast. The pilot is better than anything I have ever seen." On the screen, the shuttle danced through a storm of weapons fire. Plasma bolts and missiles filled the space around it, but none of them hit. The shuttle rolled, dived, climbed, always staying just ahead of the tracking systems. It came in low, skimming along the underside of the massive cruiser where the big weapons could not reach. Then it attached itself to a maintenance airlock with a loud clang that echoed through the whole ship. "Send all security to that airlock," Zarthok shouted.
"Kill whoever is on that shuttle!"
Inside the shuttle, Katie Morrison sat in the pilot's seat and allowed herself a small smile. Flying had always been one of her favorite skills. She had trained on every type of human aircraft and spacecraft. After that, flying an alien shuttle was easy. She grabbed her weapons and moved to the airlock. On the other side of the door, she could hear Krellian warriors gathering. They were shouting to each other, getting ready to rush in as soon as the door opened. Katie pulled out a plasma torch and began cutting through the door. The metal glowed red, then white, then began to melt. She could hear the warriors on the other side backing away from the heat. The door fell inward with a crash. Katie dropped through the opening, rolled, and came up firing. The first two warriors went down before they could even raise their weapons. The others scattered, taking cover behind cargo containers and support pillars. They started shooting back, filling the corridor with plasma fire. But Katie was not where they thought she would be. She had already moved, using a side passage she had seen on the ship schematics. She came out behind them and fired twice more. 2 more warriors fell. The rest of the security team realized what was happening and tried to regroup, but Katie was always one step ahead. She knew the ship's layout as well as they did, maybe better. She had spent her entire shuttle flight studying the plans she had stolen from the station's database. More teams were coming. Katie could hear them all over the ship, boots pounding on metal floors, officers shouting orders. Good. The more they focused on chasing her, the less attention they would pay to what she was really doing. She ran through the ship, fighting each team just long enough to keep them interested. She moved like water, flowing around their attacks, always in motion. She tried not to kill anyone if she could help it. These soldiers were following orders. They did not deserve to die for their king's stupidity, but she did make sure they would not be getting up to follow her. A strike to the knee here, a blow to the head there. She left a trail of groaning, injured warriors behind her as she made her way deeper into the ship. On the command deck, Zarthok watched the security feeds in growing horror. One small human woman was destroying his elite warriors. She moved through his ship like a demon from ancient stories, unstoppable and terrifying. "How is this possible?" he whispered. Vexnar was studying his datapad, his claws tapping nervously on the screen. "My lord, I found something. There are rumors in the galactic intelligence community. Rumors about a human operative. They call her Baba Yaga. What does that mean? It is from human mythology. A witch who lives in the forest. Sometimes she helps people, sometimes she kills them. She is very powerful and very dangerous." Zarthok stared at the screens, watching the woman fight. 6 months had passed since the formation of the Coalition of Free Systems. Katie stood in her new office on Station Meridian Prime, looking out at the stars. Her office was bigger now, with windows that showed the beautiful nebula and the ships coming and going from the station. She had earned this view through blood and determination. Danny entered carrying 2 cups of coffee from the human embassy. He had changed in the past 6 months. He stood taller, moved with more confidence. He had learned a lot about the galaxy and about himself. "The delegates are ready for the morning session," he said, handing her a cup. "Though I should mention that we have had 3 more assassination attempts blocked this month." Katie sipped her coffee and smiled slightly. "Only 3? Last month we had 5. I think the message is getting through. The message being that trying to kill you is a really bad idea?" "Exactly," Katie said. "Word spreads fast in the galaxy. Most of the people who might want me dead have decided it is not worth the risk." Danny sat down in one of the office chairs. "You know, when I first started working for you, I thought being a diplomatic assistant would be boring. Lots of paperwork, lots of meetings, nothing exciting. I was very wrong," Katie laughed. "I am sorry about that. I know this has been more stressful than you signed up for." "Are you kidding? This has been amazing," Danny said enthusiastically. "I have helped negotiate treaties between species that have been enemies for centuries. I have seen new governments being born. I have watched you stand up to bullies and tyrants and make them back down without firing a shot." "Well, mostly without firing a shot." "Mostly," Katie agreed with a smile. They walked together to the conference hall. The coalition had grown since its founding. What started as 32 systems had expanded to 48. More were applying to join every week. The coalition represented a new way of thinking about galactic politics, and many species wanted to be part of it. Inside the hall, delegates from dozens of different worlds waited. Katie recognized most of them now. There was Ambassador Krell from the Tarn Collective, whose crystal body reflected the light in rainbow patterns. Next to him sat Representative Chen from the human colony on New Terra, a young woman with bright ideas about interspecies cooperation. Further back was General Vosk from the former Krellian military, who had broken with his king and was now helping to rebuild his people's government. Commander Vexnar approached Katie as she entered. He had become one of her closest allies in the coalition. His practical experience and knowledge of Krellian politics had been invaluable during the negotiations. Ambassador Morrison, he said formally, then smiled slightly. Or should I say Baba Yaga? Katie made a face. Please do not call me that in public. I'm trying to be a diplomat, remember? Of course, Vexnar said. But you should know that the name has spread across the galaxy. There are songs about you on at least 12 different worlds. The Tarn have made a crystal sculpture in your honor. The Vexen Republic wants to name a star system after you. That is very flattering but unnecessary, Katie said. I was just doing my job. Your job was to give a speech and negotiate trade agreements, Vexnar pointed out. Instead, you single-handedly captured a galactic tyrant and freed 200 systems from oppression. I think that goes a bit beyond your job description. Before Katie could respond, the session began. The first item on the agenda was a proposal from the Vexen Republic about establishing joint defense forces for the coalition. Several smaller systems were worried about pirate attacks and wanted protection. Katie listened carefully to the arguments from both sides. Some delegates thought a military force would make the coalition look aggressive. Others argued that they needed to be able to defend themselves. The debate went on for over an hour, with strong opinions on both sides. Finally, Katie stood to speak. The room went quiet immediately. Everyone wanted to hear what she thought. I understand both concerns, Katie said. We do not want to look like we are building an empire through force. That would make us no better than King Zarthok. But at the same time, we cannot leave our member systems defenseless against pirates and raiders. She paused and looked around the room. Here is what I propose. We create a joint defense force, but with clear rules about how it can be used. It can only be deployed to defend coalition members from outside attack. It cannot be used for conquest or to force systems to join us. And most importantly, every member system has to agree before the force can be deployed. The delegates discussed this proposal for another hour, making small changes and improvements. By the end of the session, they had voted to approve the plan. The coalition would have a defense force, but one that was clearly defensive and could not be misused. After the session ended, Katie found a quiet moment in a private garden area of the station. She needed these moments of peace between the long days of negotiation and politics. The garden had plants from a dozen different worlds, all growing together in carefully controlled environments. Danny found her there, as he often did. He sat down on a bench near her and did not say anything for a while. Just kept her company in the quiet. Do you ever regret it? Danny finally asked. Giving up your old life to become a diplomat? Katie thought about the question carefully. Sometimes, she admitted. Field operations were simpler in some ways. You had a mission, you completed it, you moved on. This is more complicated. Every decision affects millions of people. Every word I say can start or prevent conflicts. But I think this is more important, Katie said. When I was in the field, I could save maybe a few hundred lives per mission. Here I can help build systems that save billions, that create peace instead of just stopping wars. Even when people try to kill you? Katie smiled. Especially then. Because every assassination attempt that fails sends a message. It says that you cannot silence the voices of peace through violence. It says that humanity will not be intimidated. A figure approached them through the garden. General Vosk, the former Krellian officer, walked with the careful steps of someone who was still getting used to being on the same side as the humans. His scales were a neutral blue color, showing calm. Ambassador Morrison, he said respectfully, may I speak with you for a moment? Of course, General. Vosk sat down, his large frame making the bench look small. I wanted to ask you something that has been bothering me. When you captured King Zarthok, you could have killed him. It would have been easy, and many would have said it was justified. Why did you let him live? Katie considered her answer. Because killing him would have made him a martyr. His supporters would have claimed he died a hero, fighting against human aggression. But by capturing him alive and letting him face justice, we showed everyone what he really was. A bully and a murderer who finally had to answer for his crimes. Vosk nodded slowly. That is wise. But there is something else, is there not? Something personal. Yes, Katie admitted. If I had killed him in the heat of battle, I would have become the thing I was trying to stop. A person who uses violence to solve problems. I wanted to prove that there was a better way. And have you proven it? Katie gestured around at the station, at the coalition members working together. I think we are proving it every day. 48 different species all working together, all choosing cooperation over conquest. That is worth more than any victory in battle. The news of the coalition's success continued to spread. More systems asked to join. The Galactic Council, which had initially been skeptical, began to see the coalition as a model for how different species could work together. Several council members approached Katie about sharing the coalition's methods with other regions of space. But there were also enemies. Some species did not like seeing humanity become so influential so quickly. Some saw the coalition as a threat to their own power. Katie knew that more challenges would come. One evening, 3 months later, Katie received a priority message from Earth. Director Paul Henderson's face appeared on her screen, and he looked serious. Katie, we have a situation. The Zoltar hierarchy is making aggressive moves toward coalition space. They have a large fleet and they are not happy about losing influence in this sector. Intelligence suggests they might be planning an attack. Katie felt the old instincts waking up inside her. The combat calculations, the threat assessments, the mission planning, but she pushed them down. She was a diplomat now, not a field operative. What do they want? Katie asked. They want you to back down. They want the coalition to dissolve, and for humanity to stay in its own little corner of space. They think you are weak because you talk about peace. They are wrong, Katie said quietly. But I would rather negotiate than fight. Set up a meeting. I will talk to their ambassador. The meeting took place a week later. Ambassador Zoltar Prime was a tall, thin creature with 6 arms and skin that looked like polished metal. He spoke with contempt in his voice, clearly expecting Katie to surrender to his demands. The Zoltar hierarchy does not recognize your coalition, he said. We demand that it be dissolved immediately. If you refuse, we will take action. Katie looked at him calmly. Ambassador, I understand your concern. The coalition has changed the balance of power in this region. But we are not a threat to you. We are simply systems that have chosen to work together for mutual benefit. Katie planted the last explosive charge on the ship's main power conduit and set the timer. She had been placing these charges all over the cruiser while the warriors chased her through the corridors. None of them had realized what she was really doing. They thought she was just running and fighting. They did not understand that every fight, every chase had been carefully planned to bring her to another critical system. The charges were small, but precisely placed. They would not kill anyone or destroy the ship. They would just disable the weapons, engines, and communications. A ship this size would take hours to repair all the damage. By then, everything would be over. Katie checked her timer. She had 4 minutes before the charges went off. That was enough time. She found a maintenance shaft and climbed up. The shaft was narrow and dark, meant for small repair drones, not people. But Katie was flexible and determined. She squeezed through the tight space, climbing hand over hand up the metal rungs. Below her, she could hear the warriors still searching. They were on Deck 7, where she had been 2 minutes ago. They did not know she was now climbing toward Deck 1, where the command center was located. Katie reached the top of the shaft and pushed open the access panel. She emerged in a storage room right next to the command deck. She could hear voices through the wall. King Zarthok was shouting at his officers, demanding to know how one human could cause so much chaos. Katie pulled out her pulse pistol and checked the charge. Full. She took 3 deep breaths, centering herself the way she had been trained. Then she opened the door and walked onto the command deck. The Krellian officers stared at her in shock. They had been watching the security feeds, watching her fight on the lower decks. How was she here? How had she gotten past all their defenses? Katie pointed her pistol at King Zarthok. Hello, Your Majesty. We need to talk. Zarthok stood frozen on his throne. His 4 eyes were wide with disbelief. This is impossible. You were on Deck 7. I saw you on the monitors. That was 2 minutes ago, Katie said calmly. I move fast when I need to. Now I think you owe me an explanation. Why did you try to kill me? The king's scales flickered between red and yellow, anger and fear fighting for control. You are a threat to my empire. Humans are a threat. You arrive in our galaxy with your talk of peace and cooperation. But I know what you really are. Conquerors like every other species. You just hide it better. So you decided to murder me to send a message? I have done it before, Zarthok said, some of his arrogance returning. Many times. Diplomats who speak against me tend to have accidents. The galaxy has learned not to oppose the Krellian Empire. Katie's expression did not change, but something cold flickered in her eyes. How many exactly? How many diplomats have you murdered? I do not keep count of insects, the king said with contempt. That was the wrong thing to say. Katie's pistol did not waver, but her voice became even colder. Those insects were people. They had families. They had dreams. They came here trying to make the galaxy a better place, and you killed them because they threatened your power. I am the Galactic King. I have the right to protect my empire. You have the right to nothing, Katie said quietly. You are a murderer and a tyrant, and today your reign ends. Zarthok laughed, a hissing sound that came from deep in his throat. You think you can kill me? Even if you do, my empire will hunt down every human in the galaxy. Your whole species will burn for this insult. I do not want to kill you, Katie said. I want you to face justice. I want the galaxy to see what you really are. At that moment, the charges Katie had planted all over the ship went off. Not explosions, just loud bangs as the charges severed power cables and control systems. The lights on the command deck flickered and went to emergency red. Alarm sirens started wailing throughout the ship. What have you done? Zarthok screamed. I disabled your weapons, engines, and communications, Katie explained. This ship is not going anywhere, and station security is on its way. As if summoned by her words, several shuttles appeared outside the view screen. They were marked with the symbols of Meridian Prime Station security. Behind them came larger ships bearing the colors of the Galactic Council peacekeepers. The command deck door burst open, and armed security officers poured in. Leading them was Commander Lisa Grant from Earth's Diplomatic Protection Force. She was a tall woman with short black hair and the kind of eyes that missed nothing. She had been a soldier before becoming a security officer, and she moved like someone who knew how to fight. Ambassador Morrison, Lisa said formally, though her eyes showed relief. We received your encrypted transmission. Station authorities are here to arrest King Zarthok for attempted murder of a diplomatic envoy and for multiple violations of the Treaty of Meridian. This is outrageous, Zarthok shouted. I am a sovereign ruler. You cannot arrest me. I have diplomatic immunity. Actually, they can arrest you, Katie said, finally lowering her weapon. When you ordered my assassination on a neutral diplomatic station, you violated the Treaty of Meridian. The treaty specifically states that any ruler who commits violence against a diplomat on neutral ground loses all diplomatic protections. You are no longer a king here. You are just a criminal. Station security officers surrounded Zarthok. One of them held up a pair of restraints designed for Krellians. The king's scales turned pure yellow as they locked the restraints around his wrists. You have made a terrible mistake, human, Zarthok hissed at Katie. My empire will not stand for this. They will demand my release. Katie met his gaze without flinching. Your empire might have something to say about that. I have been watching the news feeds. Your subjects have been waiting a long time for someone to stand up to you. I think you will find that not everyone wants you back. Commander Vexnar stepped forward slowly. He looked at Katie with a mixture of respect and fear. Ambassador Morrison, I must ask. How did one person do all of this? Our intelligence report said humans were still new to space travel, still learning about the galaxy. How were you able to infiltrate our ship and defeat our warriors? Katie holstered her pistol. Your intelligence was looking at the wrong things, Commander. Yes, humanity is new to traveling between stars, but we are not new to fighting. We have been fighting for survival since our species first stood upright. We survived ice ages and diseases that killed millions. We survived wars that covered our whole planet. We learned to fight before we learned to fly. She paused and looked around at all the aliens watching her. And some of us learned to fight better than others. Much better. Vexnar nodded slowly. I see. And this name, Baba Yaga, that is you? That was me, Katie corrected. I retired from that life 5 years ago. I became a diplomat because I wanted to help build peace instead of fighting wars. But when someone threatens that peace, when someone tries to kill me just for doing my job, I remember my old skills very quickly. Lisa Grant stepped closer and spoke quietly so only Katie could hear. The director is going to have some words for you about this. You were supposed to be done with field operations. They tried to kill me, Lisa. What was I supposed to do? Let them? No, Lisa admitted. But maybe next time try to cause less of an international incident? You just captured one of the most powerful rulers in this part of the galaxy. The political fallout is going to be massive. Katie looked at King Zarthok being led away in restraints. Good. Maybe it will make other tyrants think twice before they murder diplomats. The next few hours were busy. Station security wanted statements. The Galactic Council wanted explanations. The human embassy wanted to make sure Katie was not hurt. Through it all, Katie remained calm and professional, giving clear answers to every question. Danny arrived halfway through the debriefing. He pushed past the guards and ran to Katie, checking to make sure she was not injured. I was so worried. I heard there was fighting all over the Krellian ship. The news feeds are showing footage of you fighting dozens of warriors. I am fine, Danny, Katie assured him. Not a scratch, but how? How did you do all of this? You are a diplomat. Where did you learn to fight like that? Katie sighed. She had known this conversation would come eventually. Danny, sit down. There are some things about my past that I need to tell you, she explained, leaving out the classified details but giving him enough to understand. About her 15 years in special operations. About the missions she had done for Earth's government. The dangerous situations she had survived. About the choice she made to leave that life behind and try to make peace instead of war. Danny listened with his mouth hanging open. So you are like a super spy? Like in the movies? Not exactly, Katie said. I was just very well trained. And I was good at my job. Just good? Katie, you took over an entire warship by yourself. I had help, Katie pointed out. The station security came when I called them. And the king's own arrogance helped a lot. He thought I was weak because I am human. That was his biggest mistake. News of what happened spread through the galaxy faster than light itself. Ambassador Katie Morrison, the pleasant human diplomat with the friendly smile, had single-handedly captured King Zarthok. The story grew bigger with each telling. Some said she had fought 100 warriors. Others said she had used secret human technology. A few claimed she was not really human at all. 3 weeks had passed since the incident with King Zarthok. Katie sat in an office on Earth, in the headquarters building of the Intelligence Bureau. Outside the window, she could see the city stretching into the distance. It felt strange to be back on her home planet after so much time in space. Director Paul Henderson sat across from her desk. He was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been running the Intelligence Bureau for 20 years and had seen almost everything. But even he seemed impressed by what Katie had done. You caused quite a situation up there, Paul said, reading through her report on his tablet. The Galactic Council spent 2 weeks arguing about whether to give you a medal or put you on trial for violating about 40 different laws. I was defending myself, Katie pointed out. They attacked me first. Yes, by attacking a royal warship and kidnapping a head of state. Paul could not quite hide his smile. The lawyers are still trying to figure out the legal situation. But between you and me, you did exactly what needed to be done. He set down the tablet and looked at her seriously. But we have a problem now, Katie. We pulled you out of field operations 5 years ago specifically so you could have a normal life. So you could stop being Baba Yaga and just be Katie Morrison, diplomat. But now everyone knows what you are. Your face has been on every news feed in the galaxy. You cannot go back to being invisible. Katie had known this was coming. I know. I tried to keep my past separate from my diplomatic work. I really did try. And you did well for 5 years, Paul said. But Zarthok forced your hand. If you had let his assassins kill you, it would have sent a message that humans are easy targets. That our diplomats can be murdered without consequences. You had to fight back, so what happens now? Katie asked. Paul leaned back in his chair and thought for a moment. Now we adapt. You cannot be both things anymore. You are too well known. But maybe that is not a bad thing. The galaxy has learned that human diplomats are not soft targets. They have learned that we can defend ourselves. He pulled up some documents on his tablet and turned it so Katie could see. We are creating a new position for you. You will still be an ambassador, but everyone will know what you really are. You will be humanity's iron hand in a velvet glove. The diplomat who can fight. The negotiator who cannot be threatened. Katie read through the documents. You want me to be a deterrent. Exactly. We are also assigning you a proper security detail. People who know about your past and can watch your back. People who can keep up with you if things go bad. Danny stays with me, Katie said firmly. He has earned the right to know the truth and he is good at his job. He kept his head during the crisis. Agreed, Paul said. Though the poor kid is going to need some therapy. Finding out your boss is a legendary spy has to be traumatic. Katie allowed herself a small smile. He is tougher than he looks. He will adjust. Paul closed his tablet. There is something else you should know. The Krellian Empire is falling apart. Zarthok held it together through fear and violence. With him gone, all the systems he conquered are breaking away. Some of them are fighting each other. Others are asking for help from the Galactic Council. And they want me to help mediate, Katie guessed. Not just you. They specifically asked for you. 32 different systems have sent requests for Ambassador Morrison to help them negotiate their independence. They trust you because you stood up to Zarthok when no one else would. Katie looked out the window at the city below. Somewhere down there, people were living normal lives. Going to work, raising families, never thinking about galactic politics or alien empires. She had wanted that kind of life once. That was why she had left the intelligence service. But maybe normal was not meant for her. Maybe she was meant to stand between the peaceful people and the dangers that threatened them. Maybe that was her purpose. When do I leave? She asked. Paul smiled. 2 days. We need to brief your new security team and make sure Danny is ready for what is coming. Also, the diplomats from the new coalition of free systems want to meet with you before the official negotiations begin. Coalition of free systems? That is what they are calling themselves. 32 systems that broke away from the Krellian Empire. They want to form a new alliance based on cooperation instead of conquest. And they want Earth to be one of the founding members. Katie raised her eyebrows. That is a big step for humanity. We have only been in space for 50 years. Are we ready for that kind of responsibility? I think the question is whether the galaxy is ready for us, Paul said. You proved that humanity is not weak. Now you need to prove that we are not just warriors, that we can build peace as well as we can fight. 2 days later, Katie was back on a shuttle heading into space, but this time she was not alone. Her new security detail consisted of 4 specialists, all of them former military with experience in protection operations. They were professionals who knew when to stay back and let her work, and when to step in if danger appeared. Danny sat next to her, reviewing the files on all 32 systems they would be visiting. He still looked a bit shell-shocked from learning the truth about Katie's past, but he was adapting. He had even started taking self-defense lessons from the security team. So, Danny said without looking up from his tablet, are there more people like you in the diplomatic corps? Should I be worried that every ambassador has a secret past as a super soldier? Katie laughed. No, I am special. Most diplomats are exactly what they appear to be. Smart, educated people who are good at talking to others. I am the exception, not the rule. Good, Danny muttered. I do not think I could handle finding out that everyone has been lying to me. I never lied to you, Katie said gently. I just did not tell you everything about my past. There is a difference. Danny finally looked up at her. Are you going to keep doing this? The fighting, I mean. Or are you going back to being a regular diplomat? I am going to try to be a regular diplomat, Katie said. But if someone threatens me or threatens the peace we are trying to build, I will do what needs to be done. I will not let bad people win just because I want to be peaceful. Good, Danny said. Because I looked up Baba Yaga after you told me about your code name. She is a character from old human stories, a witch who lives in the forest and helps heroes who are respectful, but punishes those who are rude or cruel. I think that fits you pretty well, Katie smiled. I always liked those stories. Baba Yaga was not good or evil. She was just powerful and honest. She helped people who deserved help and stopped people who deserved stopping. That is what I want to be. The shuttle arrived at Station Meridian Prime, where the first meeting of the Coalition of Free Systems would take place. The conference hall had been repaired and was even more beautiful than before. Representatives from 32 different systems filled the seats and they all stood when Katie entered. Commander Vexnar was there, representing the Krellian homeworld. He approached Katie and bowed respectfully. Ambassador Morrison, on behalf of my people, I want to thank you. Since Zarthok was arrested, we held our first free elections in 300 years. My people are learning to govern themselves again instead of being ruled by fear. I am glad, Katie said sincerely. That was the whole point. Not revenge, not conquest. just giving people the freedom to choose their own path. A delegate from the Tarn Collective, a species that looked like walking crystals, approached next. Ambassador, we also want to thank you. King Zarthok destroyed our colony ships and enslaved our people. Now we are free to rebuild. We would be honored if you would help negotiate our membership in this new coalition. More delegates approached, each with similar stories. Zarthok had conquered their worlds or threatened their people. Now they were free, and they wanted help building a future based on cooperation instead of domination. Katie listened to them all. She heard their pain and their hope. She understood that what she had done on that Krellian cruiser had changed more than just her own life. It had changed the balance of power in this entire region of space. The galaxy had tried to kill the Diplomat. What they got instead was a warrior who fought for peace. And now that warrior would help build the peace she had fought for. The first session of the coalition began that afternoon. Katie stood at the podium and looked out at all the different species gathered together. She took a deep breath and began to speak. Friends and colleagues, 3 weeks ago we faced a crisis. King Zarthok believed that violence and intimidation were the only languages worth speaking. He believed that the strong should dominate the weak, and that anyone who disagreed should be silenced. She paused and looked around the room. He was wrong. We are gathered here today because we believe in something different. We believe that different species can work together as equals. We believe that strength should protect the weak, not dominate them. We believe in choosing cooperation over conquest. The delegates listened in absolute silence. Katie's reputation had made her perhaps the most influential voice in this part of the galaxy. And her words carried weight far beyond what humanity's small territory would normally command. The coalition of free systems represents a new way of thinking. Not empire through force, but community through choice. Not silence through fear, but dialogue through respect.